begin the Gemara today on Daf Kuf Vav Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. This is a continuation from the previous Mishnayos. When a person is selling a base kor offer, he's selling a certain shear, a certain amount of a piece of land. And here in this Mishnah it says that the seller added the following expressions. Mishnah. He's selling him a base kor offer, but then he says this base kor offer is b'simonov u'b'meitzarav. These are the demarcations and borders of this base kor offer. So once he adds those words, then I say pachas mishtus higiyai. If the discrepancy of the amount of the base kor to what he actually got is in the amount of less of a shtus, meaning that, let's say he gave him a base kor and it's off by less of a sixth. So then, or it's more than, or he gave him extra. He gave him more in the amount of less than a sixth. So then in such a case, I say higiyai, that whatever he got, and the sale is in effect. And now what's the reason why over here we say that even if there's such a big discrepancy from what he said he's going to give him, that it's in effect? If you remember what we learned in the previous Mishnah, there it said that when it comes to a saw, the shear the Mishnah said was by a saw, a roiva hakav, a quarter of a kav for a saw, that's the amount that it could be off from the amount that he said that he's selling him. Over here, it's saying that it could be off up to the amount of a sixth, which is much, much more. By a reva kav of a saw, every saw is made up of 6 kav. So a quarter of a kav to a saw is only a 24th to the amount of land that you're selling. That's the amount of what you say a person is meichel. Over here we're saying even if it's off up to a sixth, it's still okay. It's much off much more. So the Rashbam explains because he added the words simanav u'meitzarav. Why does he have to add that? If you're selling him a base kor, why is he saying here in these borders? Because he wants the person, the buyer, to know, as you see it in these borders, that's what it is. It could be off. He's making it very clear to him that it could be off, but nevertheless, this is what it is. So this expression is stronger than the expression that we had in the previous Mishnah, where the seller says, Hein chaser, hein yeser. Hein chaser, hein yeser means, I want to give you this exact amount, but it's going to be approximate. I can't be medayik exactly. It might be a little bit off. There we say, if it's a 24th off, then it's going to be in effect. When he says, b'simanav u'b'meitzarav, he's showing him the boundaries. So then he's saying, here, this is what it is, as is. Even if it's off up to a sixth, it's still going to be in effect. However, weiter the Mishnah says, shtos yenake. If it's off up to the amount of a shtos, so then now you're going to have to deduct from the payment. Now, shtos over here means that it's off more. If it's off half, you gave him a half less, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth, up to the amount of a shtos, so it's off much more, whether he gave him too much, and then the buyer is going to have to pay more, or he gave him too little, and then the seller is going to have to deduct from his pay. So then, you have to deduct. That's a type of ashtos here. Again, ashtos means more. It's off more, going down up to the amount of a shtos, then we say that the sale is not in effect. Or the sale actually is in effect, that is. The sale is in effect, but he's going to have to deduct from the payment.
Until, how much do you deduct the whole thing until it's just
Until the amount of the shtos, yeah. Well, we learned already before, once it's off more than it's supposed to be, so then you have to deduct the entire thing. Chayra, yeah. Okay, Zok the Gemara Itmar. Now we learned the machlekes and the pshat of our Mishnah. So, based on what we just learned here in the Mishnah speaks about pachis mishtos. What happens if it's off up to the amount of a shtos, and what happens if it's off more than a shtos? But how about if it's off exactly the amount of a sixth? That amount, it doesn't seem the Mishnah doesn't seemingly address. So the machlekes is Rav Huna says shtos kapachis mishtos. If it's off in the amount of a sixth, it's the halacha like if it's off less than a sixth, where I say that the sale is in effect. Rav Yehuda says shtos kiyasem mishtos. That if it's off a shtos, then that's already like more than a shtos. And over here, even though the sale is in effect, but he's going to have to deduct and pay more, or if it's more or less. So shtos is like more than a shtos. So the Gemara explains regarding how you read the Mishnah here. Rav Huna mashtos kepachis mishtos. Rav Huna says that a shtus has the same halacha like if it's off less than a shtus, where there you don't have to deduct anything, you just leave it as is. Hachikama, you read the Mishnah as follows: Pacha is mishtos. That once he tells him simanov u'meitzarav, and then I say that if it's less than a shtos, then it's fine. You meichel ushtus b'chlal, and a shtus is also included in that. Higiyai, that he got what he got, and you leave it as is. Yaisa mishtos. Only if it's more than a shtos, then you're not getting. That's when you have to deduct the amount of what's extra that you have to deduct if it's too little or and so on. Okay, so in other words, the Rashbam explains that according to the pshat of Rav Huna, the way to read the Mishnah when it says the words at shtus yanake. So here Rav Huna is explaining that means only Yaisim Ishtus. The ad in the Mishnah, the word ad in the Mishnah means ad v'loy ad b'chlal. Up to the amount of a shtus, then Yanake, that means only up to the amount of a shtus. But the actual shtus itself, once it's the amount of the shtus itself, then it's like pachas mishtus. Then I say that the sale as is. Okay, so that's according to Rav Huna's pshat. Rav Yehuda Omer, and Rav Yehuda Omer, that is, Rav Yehuda says, shtos ki yaisim mishtos, that once it's off in the amount of a sixth, then it has the same halacha as more than a sixth. Hachika Amar, this is how you read the Mishnah, pachis mishtos higiyai. If it's less than a shtos, then the sale is in effect as is. At shtos, but if it's more, it's off more, up to the amount of a shtos, ushtos b'chlal. And when it says in the Mishnah the word ad shtos, ad is ad va'ad b'chlal, including if it's off in the amount of a shtos of a sixth, yanake. So then if he gave him less in that amount, he's going to have to deduct from his pay. And so it's ad, according to Rav Yehuda, is ad va'ad b'chlal. Okay, that's the two Ifanim had to explain the words of ad shtos in the Mishnah, whether ad v'loy ad b'chlal or ad va'ad b'chlal. Okay, now it's just another point here that Taisa speaks about regarding the first part of the Lashon of the Mishnah. When it says pachas mishtos, there's actually two girses in the Mishnah. One girsa in the Mishnah is, as it's written over here, pachas mishtos, which sounds like the Mishnah is saying that if it's less than a sixth, that it's off, then igiyah, then the sale is in effect. But there's another girsa in the Mishnah, and that is without the mem, pachas shtos. So these two girsas, Taisa says, seems to fit with the machlekes here, with Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. If you hold like Rav Huna, then it would seem like the right girsa in the Mishnah should be pachais shtos. If it's off, it's less in the amount of a shtos. A shtos is already like if it's off less than a shtos. And if you guide us in the Mishnah pachais mishtos, so then that means only if it's off less than the amount of a sixth, then I say that the sale is in effect as is. But if it's an actual shtos, then I say that the sale is not in effect. Those are the two girsas here in the Mishnah. But the truth is, whichever girsa you learn, you can say both opinions, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. But I just want to point out this point here, that there are two girsas in the Mishnah that could fit with the two opinions of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. Okay, the Gemara brings a brayse, Meisvei, the brayse says, there's a brayse that speaks seemingly about this case clearly, a case where it's off in the amount of a sixth. When the seller said to the buyer, I'm selling you the field in these demarcations and in these borders. He gave him a territory that's less in the amount of a sixth, or he gave him extra in the amount of a sixth. Harehu kishum hadayanim. What's the halacha? It has the same halacha like when Bezdin evaluates a property that they are selling. When is Bezdin selling a property? So this is a Gemara in Ksubis that discusses a case where you have Almana and Yisaimim that have to be fed from the estate of the husband or father that passed away. So then Bezdin goes and takes those properties and evaluates it and sells it in order to be able to feed the Almana and the Yisaimim. So when Bezdin evaluates this, so just like the halacha is over there regarding Shum Hadayanim, that if Bezdin evaluated off, it was off by a sixth. So same thing over here, we compare the halacha of when a person is selling and it was off by a sixth, whether he gave extra or whether he gave less in the amount of a sixth. It's the same halacha like when Bezdin evaluated and he giyai. And the sale as is in effect. That's the lashon of the brayse. So this brayse is clearly speaking about this case when it's off exactly a sixth. Now what do you see from this brayse? So first the Gemara addresses the comparison. It's comparing it to the case of Shuma Dayanim, when Dayanim are evaluating and it was off. So the first svara the Gemara has here is V'ha Shuma Dayanim. What's the halacha when Bezdin is evaluating selling a property and their evaluation was off? Dishtos ki yaisim ishtosu. Over there the halacha is, and here first the Gemara quotes. This is really a machlokes in the Gemara in Ksubis. First the Gemara quotes the opinion of the Chachamim. The Chachamim hold that if when Bezdin evaluated and it was off more than a sixth, then the whole evaluation and the whole sale is null and void. And the same thing also, according to the Chachamim, when it was off exactly a sixth, so then the whole evaluation is also null and void. So over there by Shuma Dayanim, the halach is that shtos is kiyaisim ishtos. That when it's off a sixth, it's the same like if it was off more than a sixth. And we say that the whole thing is null and void. If so, the Braisa here, that's saying by a sixth, that it's like Shuma Dayanim, seemingly the Braisa is saying that, like the opinion of Rav Yehuda, that when it's off a sixth, that means that it's just like it was off more than a sixth, and the whole sale should be null and void. Or not mamish null and void in our case, but you would have to deduct from the payment if you got less than the amount of a sixth. Okay, so that's the comparison regarding Shuma Dayanim. But the Gemara right away asks on this, how could you say that that's what this Bryce is trying to say? Amalach Rav Huna will answer you, but according to your reasoning, that's the pshat of the comparison to Shuma Dayanim. What does it say right afterwards? Higiyai. The Bryce says that in such a case, when it's off a sixth, higiyai, that the sale is in effect. You can't say that we're comparing to Shuma Dayanim and they're just like there. If the evaluation was off more than a sixth or was off a sixth, then in both cases the evaluation is null and void. And same thing over here. Adarabah, the Bryce is saying higiyai, that the sale is in effect when it's off a sixth, exactly like what Rav Huna said. So the Gemara says, so in order to answer Rav Yehuda's opinion, so the Bach takes out the word Ella, and he adds in over here that this is Rav Yehuda answering for his opinion. Amalei Rav Yehuda will answer you and say, Kishuma Dayanim, that what this Braisa is saying over here is that we're comparing to Shuma Dayanim, v'loi Kishuma Dayanim. But on the other hand, it's not compared to Shuma Dayanim. Okay, 1 second. But before I come to the answer of the Gemara, let me just explain again one other point over here regarding Rav Huna's question. I mentioned before that this halacha of Shuma Dayanim, till here, the Gemara was following the Chachamim's opinion. The Chachamim hold when it's off by a sixth, it's just like if it's off more than a sixth and the whole evaluation is null and void. That's the Chachamim's opinion. But now when Rav Huna asks his question and he says, but over here in the Braisa it says higiyai, that the sale is in effect, and we're comparing to Shuma Dayanim. So what Rav Huna means to ask is that if you look in the Gemara in Ksubis, there's another opinion. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says when the Shuma Dayanim was off a sixth, then the evaluation still is in effect. And that's what it's coming to say over here according to Rav Huna, that when it's off a sixth, the sale is still in effect as is. That was his question. So the Gemara comes back, Rav Yehuda comes back and answers and says no, that we are going to follow what the Chachamim said, the Chachamim's opinion regarding Shuma Dayanim, that once it's off a sixth, then it's like it's off more than a sixth, and the evaluation is not in effect. So, why over here does it say higiyai? Why over here does it say that when it's off a sixth, that higiyai, that the sale is in effect? So Rav Yehuda explains as follows: Kishuma Dayanim v'loi Kishuma Dayanim. On one hand, we are comparing it to the halacha when judges are evaluating, but on the other hand, it's not exactly the same. What does that mean? Kishuma Dayanim. On one hand, we're comparing it to when Dayanim evaluate lishtos regarding the amount, regarding this amount. That if it's off a sixth, then I say that the evaluation is not good. Similar over here, when it's off a sixth, then I say the sale is not good as is. You're going to have to deduct from the pay. But on the other hand, v'loi Kishuma Dayanim, but it's still not 100% compared to Shuma Dayanim because the ilu hasam batal mekach. In the case where Bezdin sold a property and their evaluation was off in the amount of a sixth or more, the entire evaluation and the entire sale is all null and void. But v'ilu hacha, over here, when it comes to our case, when it was off a sixth, and according to Rav Yehuda, when it's off a sixth, we compare it to the case where it's off more than a sixth. What's the halach over here? Do we say that the entire sale is null and void? No. What we say over here is higiyai, but higiyai over here in the Braisa doesn't mean that you leave it as is. Higiyai means that the sale is still in effect, but you just have to deduct the extra money that he paid because he got a smaller field. That's what higiyai means. So over here, it's different than Shuma Dayanim, because by Shuma Dayanim, when Bezdin made an evaluation that was off, the whole sale is batal. But over here, we're not going to say that the whole sale is batal. And the Rashbam explains the reason is when Bezdin sells something and they make a wrong evaluation, so then the whole sale was not proper. The whole sale, the Bezdin made a wrong evaluation, the whole thing is batal. But over here though, the Lekeach and the Moicher, the Lekeach wants to buy this property. He's still interested in the sale being in effect. The Moicher also still wants the sale. In this case, we're not going to be mevatel the entire sale just because it was off a sixth. In the case that it was off from the amount that he was supposed to get, so then you deduct from his pay. So that's what the word higiyah over here doesn't mean that you leave it as is and you don't deduct. Higiyah just means that don't compare it fully to the case of Shumah Dayanim where the whole entire thing is totally null and void. Over here, if it's off by a sixth or more than a sixth, so then, according to Rav Yehuda's opinion, you're going to have to deduct from the payment, but the sale is still in effect. That's why the Braisa uses the term higiyah. So it's not a question on Rav Yehuda's opinion. Okay, now the Gemara goes on to a story that happened and that is connected to our Mishnah. Rav Papa Zoven Are Mahu Gavra. Rav Papa bought a property from a person. So the case over here, as we'll see in the Gemara, is someone came to Rav Papa and showed him. He showed him a property. Here, you want to buy this property. And an Amalei, the person tells Rav Papa, Havia Esrin Grivi Mashche, that this property has the amount of 20 saw. That's its size. And then, after the sale, he comes and looks, he sees that it's only 15 saw. That's a discrepancy from what he told him, much more than a sixth. So now, based on what it says in our Mishnah, you should say that in such a case, he has to deduct from the payment because it's not the amount that he told him. Also, like Abaye, so our Papa came to ask Abaye about this case. Abaye tells him, even though it's off more than a sixth of what you were told, savris v'kiblis. You saw what it is and you accepted it, and you take it as is, and you're not going to deduct any of the pay. So the Gemara asks, but for Tanan, the Mishnah said, Pachis mishtos higiyah. If it's off less than a sixth, then you leave it as is. But at shtos, you not get. But if it's off more, up to the amount of a sixth, or maybe even in the amount of a sixth as well, so then you have to deduct from the pay. So the Gemara explains, no, our case is different. That's only in a case where you didn't see, you're not there, you didn't realize how much less it is. But in a case where he's showing you the property and you see that the size that he's telling you is not the size that it actually is. In such a case, sava v'kibel. So you heard and you saw, and whatever he told you, you accepted it as is. You wanted this field as is, even though you know that it's less than what he told you. So Papa still pressed on further and asked, but for ha'esren amali, but he told me that it's 20. So he told me it's 20. Why shouldn't we still say that he was under the impression that it's 20, and that's why I misunderstood, and I should still should still deduct from my pay because it's less than this amount that he told me it is. So the Gemara answers, Abaye explained to him, the fact that he told you that it's 20 doesn't mean anything. He's telling you that this field, which is only 15 saw, it's just as good in quality. It's a very good field. It's good in quality, like a field of 20. But the fact that he showed you the field and you saw it, and you were able to very easily see that it's off from the amount that he told you it is, we assume that you accepted it as is, and therefore in this case, the sale remains as is, and we don't deduct from the pay. Okay, now the Gemara begins a new inyan. The Rashbam over here explains that in the continuation of the Gemara, you will see some connection to what we're talking about, but it's a new subject. Let's see. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa. Rabbi Yosi says, Ha'achin shecholku, brothers that come to divide an inheritance. So in order to divide, so they're dividing it equally, but now in order to determine who gets which part of the properties, so they're going to make a geidel. So kivin she'ala geidel le'echad man, when the geidel was made, and you see in the geidel one of the brothers which portion he gets. So even though the geidel for the other brother or the other brothers was not yet made, kanu kulam, they're all kaina already. What this means is that now the brother that got with his geidel, his portion, he can't back out from that anymore. What he got, even though the others didn't get their part yet, the geidel didn't fall out yet for the other brothers, but yet what he got, and then it stays as is. Now obviously, if you only have two brothers here, then it's very simple. So that once you have the geidel for one brother, so then the other brother, gets the other portion that remains. But the case of here is even if there's more than one brother, even if there's 3-4 brothers, and one brother got his part, and then you have the other portions that you still have to make a geidel between the remaining brothers. So even though this is sort of incomplete, but nevertheless, the first brother, once he got with his geidel, which part is his, that geidel is in effect, and that's what he got, and you can't back out from that anymore. My timer, what's the reason for this? Why do we say that even though it's an incomplete division, but yet what one brother got right away in the geidel is his? It's kind of right away. Rabbi Lazar says, Ketchilas Eretz Yisrael. It's like when Yidden came the first time to divide the territory in Eretz Yisrael. Just like in the beginning when they came to divide Eretz Yisrael, it was done by a geidel. And once the geidel was made for one shevet, it's in effect, even if the geidel for the other shvatim was not yet done, avkan begeidel. So too over here, with a geidel, it takes effect right away, and one brother is kaina. So the Gemara asks on this, if you're comparing to Eretz Yisrael, so then, ima lahalon bekalpi ve'urim v'tumim, by Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't just a geidel. They had a geidel, but it also was through Ruach HaKodesh that came out through the Urim v'tumim. So that's why it took effect right away. So Avkan over here, you're going to say by a brother that you say that he's Zeicher right away, even though he's the only one that the geidel came out for him. B'kalpi v'urim v'tumim. So you're going to have to say here also that there has to be a geidel together with Urim v'tumim. So obviously that's not possible. So how could you compare to Eretz Yisrael, where over there it wasn't just a geidel, it was a geidel together with the Ruach HaKodesh of the Urim v'tumim. Rav Ashi, so Rav Ashi answers, over here, the reason why we say that it takes effect right away, the benefit that they have in the fact that they made up that we're going to divide this way and we're going to follow the geidel, and the hana that they have that they're following and listening to one another to divide it this way, gamri umaknu lahadadi. They make up their mind fully to divide it based on the geidel, even if you say that by Eretz Yisrael we see that the geidel itself is not strong enough to make a kinyan, but over here, because there's the hana that the brothers have from one another, that they're dividing it this way and they're listening to one another, that hana is enough that the person is gaimer das. He makes up his mind, I will rely on the geidel, and therefore the geidel itself, even for one brother, takes effect. The Mefarshim bring an eye here from this Gemara to an interesting machlokes Rishonim regarding the division of Eretz Yisrael. There's a machlokes whether when they divided Eretz Yisrael, there were two parts to the division. They divided the territory for the shvatim, for each tribe, but then they also divided and gave every person, every individual, there was a geidel for every individual family, every person to get his lot, within the shevet. So from the question of our Gemara that it's asking that in Eretz Yisrael they divided both geidel and Urim v'tumim, it's mashma from the Gemara that the fact that they used both a geidel and Urim v'tumim was not just for the shevet b'chlal, but for every individual. Because if you're going to say that for every individual they did not use Urim v'tumim, then what's the question of the Gemara? In Eretz Yisrael, only by the whole shevet they used the Urim v'tumim, not for every individual. So it's mashma like the opinion of the Ramban. He says that in Eretz Yisrael, every yid for the territory that he got, it was always with a geidel and Urim v'tumim. Okay, now the Gemara goes on based on this, talking about the division of the brothers. Itmar, so now we learned the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel. Shnei achen, two brothers, shecholku, that divided the inheritance. Now what happens? A third brother from overseas shows up, and they weren't aware that they had a third brother, and this third brother from overseas shows up, and he brings proper proof that he's a third brother. So what do you do now? It turns out that they have to now divide it, and you have to give a portion to the third brother. So Rav says, Vatla machlokes, that the way it was divided in the beginning is all null and void. They have to start over again from the beginning. Shmuel says, mekamtzen, that each brother is going to have to give a portion of what he got for the third brother. So you don't have to be mevatel the entire division. You just have to give, each one has to give a portion. For example, if there was 6 fields, and if it was divided between 2 brothers in the beginning, so each one got 3. So now when the third brother shows up, each brother has to give 1 of his fields to the brother, and like this, each one gets only 2. When it's divided with 3, so you don't have to redo the entire division. The Rashbam says it's this piece of the Gemara which is related to the halacha that we're learning until here, why the Gemara brings it up. Just like we're discussing over here in a case of a sale, when it was off a sixth or more than a sixth, whether you leave it as is or whether you have to deduct. So it's similar halacha over here. Rav says that you have to redo the entire division again, and Shmuel says no, you just have to give that portion that the third brother deserves. So So now here the Gemara discusses the basis of both of these opinions, Rav and Shmuel. Amalei Rav Nachman, so Rav says to Rav Nachman. Rav says that the entire division now that the third brother showed up, the entire division is null and void. So Alma I see Hadadina, that Rav holds that even though they made a proper division when there was only two brothers, but now that we see that there's a third brother, so that division was not correct. It wasn't the amount of brothers that there are. So then the whole thing goes back. It's as if it never happened. If that's the case, so Elamayata, if so, we should apply this in another case. Hani betlase, the kaimi, you have three people that are partners in a property. V'azal betrei minayu, and two of the partners went upaluk, and they decided that they're going to divide. They're going to divide the partnership, and they didn't tell the third partner about this. Hochanami, so are you going to say that there as well, that now when the third partner shows up and he hears that they divided, are you going to say the batla machlekes, that the entire division is going to be batal because the third partner wasn't let into their plan to divide, and now he comes, are you going to say that they're going to have to redo the entire division? It doesn't work that way. The Rashbam here brings that you see in the Gemara, he brings from the Gemara in Bava Basra, where you see over there, Rashbam brings a story there that happened between Isser and Rav Safra in such a kind of a case where there is a partnership and you have a few partners. So you have two partners that they decide to divide, and then later if a third partner shows up, he's going to get his part. They don't have to even if he wasn't there in the decision that they're going to break up and they're going to divide, it doesn't matter. It was done properly. It was done in a bezdin, and over there it's pashut that when the third partner shows up, you don't have to redo the entire division. He just gets his part. So why over here by the brothers should it be any different? If it was made a proper division with a bezdin, why if a third brother shows up, you say hadadina that the whole thing has to be done over again from the beginning? So the Gemara says that there's no comparison. Hachi hashte. How could you compare the case of the partners to the case of the brothers? Hasam nechisi adaita de bet lasa. Over there, by the case of the partners, again, the partners, let's say there were three partners, and only two of the partners decided that we're going to divide. They didn't let in the third partner in their plan. But when they divided it in the beginning, they know that they have a third partner. So they divided it in the beginning properly. Each one took only a third. And they left the last third for the third partner. Even though the third partner wasn't there yet, but when he shows up, he's going to get his part. There's no reason to break up the whole division after that third partner shows up. But in our case, when it comes to the brothers, when they divided the property, these two brothers, they didn't divide it in thirds. They only divide it in half. One for one brother, one for the other brother. Now the third brother shows up, it's a different division. It's a different amount. They weren't even aware that they had a third brother. So therefore Rav says in such a case, when the third brother shows up, now it's a new story. Now we have to start again from scratch. It's three brothers. Now the Gemara explains Shmuel's opinion. Rav Papa says to Abaye, according to Shmuel, Shmuel that says that once the third brother shows up, you don't have to start the division again. Each one just has to give his portion for the third brother. So lememre, should we say that this means the kam dina? Once bezdin paskins and they made a division, so then that din remains in effect, and therefore you don't have to start over again from the beginning. But why is that the din? We know that Rav and Shmuel both said, and we had this a few times before here, that in the case where a person is selling, and he says, Kor b'shloishim ani moichelach, I'm selling you this amount of a kor for 30 coins. So then, in such a case, yachalach zaboy afilu b'saw achrayna. So a kor is made up of 30 saw. If the buyer is doing a meshicha, we're talking here about metaltalin, he's taking one portion at a time. He's taking one saw, another saw, another saw. Let's say it's from wheat, and it's an amount of a quart, and he's taking one portion at a time. So until the last saw that he gets the full amount of the quart, he can retract from this whole sale. Why? Because it said a quart. That has to be a full quart. That's what the kinyan is. Until that amount of a quart, the sale is not in effect. Now, however, if the seller said kor b'shloishim saw, I'm selling you a kor for 30 a kor. B'shloishim, that is, again, kor b'shloishim, I'm selling you a kor for 30 coins, and then he specified saw b'sela, each saw is the value of a sela, ani moichalach, that's what I'm selling you. So here I say rishain kana, that every amount of a saw that he got, he's kind of right away, because he spelled out each saw is going to be for a sela. Now what's the Gemara's question? So the Rashbam explains, the Gemara's question is, why don't you say over here, in this case, similar to the halacha by the brothers? even though Hitaka told him that I'm selling you the full core for 30 coins, and when you take only part of that core, you're getting less of the shear that's meant to be in this sale, but even less of the shear. You're taking some of that shear that is being sold here. The full amount is taka core. But if you get half of that, it's half of what is meant to be in this sale. So why shouldn't you say that what you got, and then the sale is in effect right away, and then you take more until the sale is complete. Similar to what we say by the brothers. That even though in the beginning there were 2 brothers, and now it turns out that there's 3 brothers. So if not as 3, it turns out that the way the division was done before was incomplete, because really there's a 3rd brother. But what does Shmuel say? We're not going to redo the entire division. We say that what was done before is in effect. Elamai, you just have to add. It's incomplete, because now there's a 3rd brother, so you have to add to the division. So the same thing we should say over here regarding a sale. Even though the full amount of the sale is 30, a full core, but every part of the sale separately should be in effect. And then when you come to the full share, that's when it's done. But even before it's done, why can't we say that each amount is also right away in effect? So the Gemara answers, you can't compare. Hasam, Avad Rabbanan, Milsa, the Nichalel, Maichev, and Nichalel, Keach. When it comes to a sale, over there, the Chachamim were Masakin. It's Takana of the Chachamim that once this language is used in a sale, that it should be a full core for 30 coins, that it gives both the seller and the buyer a chance to back out of the kinyan, which is for the benefit of both of them. Because when this language is used, so that means that each one of them is thinking that maybe he wants to back out before the sale is totally complete. So when it comes to a sale, when a person is not sure he wants to even buy this, over here he has a chance to back out until he gets the full amount. But when it comes to a division of brothers, it's not a matter of a sale. Over here, I have a certain portion in the inheritance. So once I got a certain portion, even if the division was incomplete, but what I got. And then you're going to have to just adjust it to the 3rd brother that comes. And therefore over there, you're not going to have to redo the entire division.